Sweet. Well, welcome. Today we are going to be talking about metabolic adaptations, why we see plateaus, and what kind of implications that has in regards to our hormone health. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, first of all, I've talked about this in the past, but consider your body like your cell phone. Like when your body or when your cell phone goes to 20%, your cell phone asks you like, hey, do you want me to go into power save mode? And you're like, yes, I want you to live as long as possible. So, you switch in that power save mode. So in that power save mode, your phone is going to offload apps like running time. I know personally, I've been dealing with it a lot lately. There must have been a new upgrade or with maybe the newest iPhone 13, and now my older phone is obsolete. I don't really know. The battery's dying like super quick. So anyways, it is taking forever for things to upload. And if I'm in power save mode, it's like, nothing is working because my phone has offloaded those apps that aren't necessary to survival. Screen light is dim. Like overall, my phone is just working to conserve energy because it doesn't have enough to survive long term. So that's exactly what your body does. Your body goes into a power save mode when it's in a caloric deficit, essentially for an extended period of time. So that could be something like, you're working out 7 days a week and you're eating 1,200 calories. You probably feel like garbage at that point too, but at that point, your body is just interpreting its environment. It doesn't know that tomorrow you could eat 2,000 calories and that would bring you up to where you need to be and cover all your resources. And it doesn't know you can go to the fridge. It doesn't know you can go to the grocery store. It is operating off of basically evolutionary cues from, when you had to, well, not you personally, but when humans had to hunt and gather. So, in times of scarcity, it was necessary for the body to kind of slow down and conserve energy and then eat and have resources during times of plenty. So I'm going to go ahead and share an image with you in regards. There we go. So basically, stop it. So basically what this image kind of shows is what is going on when we go into a weight loss period or a deficit. So things that are constant. So we've got our basal metabolic rate, so our BMR, non-exercise activity, so that's our need, the thermic effect of food, and exercise activity. So those are the 4 components of your metabolism. So when intake, so we'll go ahead and look up here. So more calories burned means up arrow, less calories burned down, and then neutral is the minus. So when we're working to gain weight, our basal metabolic rate will go up. The body has to work harder to move more weight around. When our weight goes down, then we lose basal metabolic rate. So generally in a fat loss period, we will lose some muscle mass. We will probably actually lose, well, we'll go into need as well, but during a fat loss period, some of the weight that we lose is likely muscle mass. Muscle mass contributes to our basal metabolic rate. That is why it's important to go through strength cycles after loss cycles so that you can reestablish any muscle mass that was potentially lost so that your next fat loss period can be just as successful. So basically, we're reestablishing basal metabolic rate during that strength cycle. Now, eating more and eating less has no effect on basal metabolic rate outside of limiting resources, which could lead to muscle breakdown. But that's totally aside from basal metabolic rate. So non-exercise activity. So that's your need. That's going for your walks. That's ways of increasing activity without increasing stress. So this would be something like if you were to decide maybe not to walk, This would be a conversation pace at something else. So if you were going to ride your bike, this would be like going at it at a conversation pace, so not hard. So when we're in a weight gain period or a strength phase, this will likely go up. So the body, so during times of maintenance calories, slightly surplus calories, the body looks for ways to move. You'll find that people that are eating enough are twitching more or like fidgeting more. Or if you've ever been someone that's super active and then you have to sit in a class all day, such as myself, you find that you're playing with your pen, you're tapping your foot, like that is increasing or increased NEAT. So that is what the body does when it has enough supplies to just kind of spend freely, I guess you could say. It spends its energy freely. During weight loss periods, NEAT goes down. So we become less motivated. Like going on those walks is just hard. They've actually shown that people blink at a slower rate during times of deficit because the body is working to conserve energy. When we eat more, that's going to also increase NEAT because you've got more energy to go do things. When you eat less energy, less motivation, less desire to do things. The body is trying to conserve energy. Then we have the thermic effect of food. So during weight gain and weight loss periods, like the thermic effect of food, it's not affected by the loss or gain. It's affected by the amount of food that is consumed or the food that is not consumed. So when we eat more food, hopefully we're choosing nutrient-dense foods, which are going to increase the thermic effect of our food. So we can actually increase our metabolism by picking higher quality food, making sure that we're hitting our protein. Protein is the most thermically effective macro. So that is going to give us more calories burned for the breakdown and distribution of the macro. Eating more fruits and vegetables. Not only do you get those vitamins and minerals, but there's likely more fiber in there, which is going to slow down the digestive process and allow for more of those nutrients to be absorbed through the intestines and the digestive process. Now, when you eat less, you're not getting as much of that in. So you're not getting as much of a thermic effect from your food. And then exercise activity. So, that makes up maybe 5 to 10% of your total daily calories burned. And when we're gaining weight, that's going to increase because your body has to move around more weight. When we're losing weight, it decreases because your body's moving around less weight. When calories are higher, it's going to increase because you have more fuel. And when it's less, it's going to decrease because you have less fuel. So that is kind of an overall understanding of how each of the components of your total daily energy expenditure are affected by either a strength or kind of a gaining phase versus a loss phase. All right, any questions on that one? Nope. Okay. So the next one I'm going to kind of talk about is going to have to do, it's very similar to what I just talked about. So just kind of putting it into a graph form. So we've got our basal metabolic rate. We talked about that and how that is affected by increasing food, decreasing food. And then we talked about non-exercise activity. So NEAT, so increasing activity without increasing stress, thermic effect of food, higher quality food. When we're consuming more calories, that will give us more energy burn. And then exercise making up about 5 to 10% of your total daily energy expenditure. So on here, you'll see, things that we just went over. So the basal metabolic rate is higher for larger bodies. NEAT, that is, so I think NEAT is the most underappreciated calorie burning thing that we can do. We think it's boring, so it's not accomplishing anything. But really, it is maintaining muscle mass better than cardio. Cardio is more likely to tear down muscle mass. So in a study they did on fat loss, they said that about 50% of fat loss or weight loss, not fat loss, weight loss due to cardio endeavors, basically 50% came from muscle mass and 50% came from fat. When nutrition and strength training was applied, only about 25% of muscle mass was lost versus the 75% going to fat mass. So in that situation, or just in general, it is better to manipulate calories and focus on strength training versus cardio to maintain as much muscle mass as possible. So when we are in a deficit, and I think the next picture I actually have is better in describing kind of what that deficit looks like. So when we move through a calorie restriction time, so basically say you've done it right, you build up your metabolism, you're at maintenance, like your body's feeling good, like all your biofeedback markers say that you're in a good spot, like hormones are good, sleep is good, energy is good. Overall, your body is just telling us, hey, I feel good, I'm in a good spot. So that is what we would kind of basically say is our baseline. From there, we create some sort of calorie restriction and we go along for a little bit, and depending on how steep the deficit, because if we create too much of a deficit, the body will respond quickly because it will work to maintain survival. So if it's like, oh my gosh, like you just cut my calories by a third and I barely have enough to, function, and barely enough for my basal metabolic rate to keep my liver and my brain and my muscles, like I'm going to respond quicker. I'm going to slow down other processes to make sure that I'm not going to die. So in that case, we see plateaus start to occur. So the body is metabolically adapting to this calorie deficit that you've created. So generally that's why, like for myself, I like to create small calorie deficits and then adjust as needed, because the goal is to make the smallest calorie deficit needed to see change. If we start creating like huge deficits, that's where the body responds quickly. So someone going from, holidays, I don't give a, whatever, to 1200 calorie restriction, yes, they're going to lose the weight quickly, but their body is also going to metabolically adapt relatively quickly. And then all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh my gosh, like one, like cravings might kick in, like two, we might see hormonal things. So things in regards to reproductive health. So reproductive hormones are not essential to survival. So when a woman, or even men, when men go into deficits, like testosterone will downregulate. But for women, we see issues in association with their cycle. Like maybe they're in too much of a deficit to ovulate. So that being, the reason why a woman has a cycle. So in situations like that, if you try and hold on to these deficits, if you try and increase activity, the body is going to register that as too much stress and start to push against you. So things that you can do during, points of plateauing or metabolic adaptation. So either basically adding calories back to create a feeling of safety for the body and then pursuing a deficit again, or creating a deficit and basically going until, I don't want to say that, I don't like to take people to the place that the body crashes, but essentially that's where a lot of people get stuck and they don't exit out of the deficit appropriately. And then they end up feeling like they failed or they fell off the wagon. They go back and they eat all the things that they were restricting. And then we see things start to occur like what I talked about last week with the body fat overshooting. So during these diet periods, depending on the extent of the deficit, and this is once again one of the reasons why we don't create huge deficits, is because like that is more likely going to occur or going to cause potential for more body fat cells to be created. Like the steeper the deficit, the more the body is like, oh my gosh, I need to put up defense mechanisms to make sure that this never happens again. And that if it does, I am prepared with fat stores. So when we do go into a deficit or when we do see plateaus, sometimes we actually want to feed the body more food. And now that's not a, hey, I'm going to go and I don't know. I mean, Cheesecake Factory doesn't do any sort of all you can eat, but if you were to be like, oh, I'm going to get more calories, I'm going to go to the Chinese lunch buffet for 3 days in a row. That's not the kind of calorie increase we're talking. We're talking about like a slow increase, like maybe an extra 100 or 200 calories, depending on where you are. If you're going into a deficit appropriately, that might be all you need. If you've already dropped your calories to 800, 1200 calories, and for some people that might seem like crazy, why would anyone go there? And trust me, I'm with you. Why would anyone go there? But I've seen a lot of people do that. I've seen people have come to me 800 calories, 1000 calories, 1200 calories, and wondering why they can't lose weight. And it's because their body has downregulated metabolic functions. It's because they've never gone back to making their body healthy after a deficit. So that is one of the reasons why it is so important to enter into a diet in a healthy spot and not the, I just came off the holidays and I was drinking and eating like an a-hole kind of healthy spot, because that's not a healthy spot. Basically coming from a healthy spot where all the biofeedback says that you're in a good place, going into an appropriately managed deficit, and then coming out of it and restoring maintenance and probably going into a strength cycle to restore any sort of muscle mass or metabolic firepower that could have been lost during the diet period. So in total, basically, when you do reach plateaus, it would either be bring calories up for a little bit, appropriate, like controlled increase, depending on the extent of the metabolic adaptations. Because if someone is feeling like garbage, like cutting their calories further, probably not the best idea. Depending on how someone's feeling, maybe they are in a good spot that their body is still giving us biofeedback markers that say it's okay to cut calories a little bit further. And if that's the case, then we can. But at some point at the end of that deficit, a restoration period needs to occur. Because if we hold on to a deficit for too long, we will see far too many metabolic adaptations, slowing of metabolism, like decreased energy, like reproductive hormones, thyroid issues, like digestive issues. Like there's a whole host of problems that can occur if a diet is held on to for too long, or if it is not exited out of appropriately. Yeah. Any questions on that?
No, I think it totally makes sense, like, especially for me, like personally, like where we're at in my process and stuff like that, what we talked about on Friday.
Good. Well, sweet. Well, I hope this was helpful.
Yeah. It's always helpful to like understand the science behind it.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah. Wait, I can't just like slash my calories in half. That's not a
Yeah.
good idea.
And it makes sense too, like, looking back, historically, like over my, like losses and gains and, staying the same and all that, it makes sense why, before I started things with you. I mean, because I do think I was like in that really low calorie range, and the calorie rate, like even when I was like maybe up to like 1200 or whatever, it wasn't like really quality calories, you know what I mean? So 1200 calories of like, equal amounts of like protein and carbs and, fat versus like 1200 calories of all carbs, or, as much body adjust to it differently. So I am starting to understand all that.
Yay. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
for
like, sure.
Watching calories on MyFitnessPal and being like, oh, but I'm only eating 1200 calories. And, as you said, it's like, oh, but 90% of what you're consuming is carbs, and, like 10% is protein, and, your goals are this, and that's not supporting it.
Yep.
So, there's a huge difference between hitting calories and like hitting macros and, supporting that nutritious intake of food.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, it's definitely helpful to understand. Keeps the motivation going when
Yes, 100%.
yeah, for sure.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. If there are any questions that do come up, please let me know. Yeah, I'll post this and you can rewatch it or send it to your friends.
Sounds good.
Perfect. All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.